Hi, and welcome to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Tharaka Foundation focused on youth mental health. Before we begin today's episode, I just wanted to let you all know that all content that is found in our podcast is created for informational purposes only. This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, treatment, or therapy. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition, and never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard in this podcast. Thank you so much, and without further ado, let's get started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of our incredible conversation with the one and only Dr. Isabelle Hau. If you joined us for episode 1, you heard Dr. Hau powerfully unpack the science of connection and show us how the most basic need we have, the need for being securely attached and loved, is actually the most ultimate accelerator for learning inside our brains. He showed us that the greatest system we can invest in is in human relationships. If you haven't listened, please do, and it's linked in the description below. So, welcome, Dr. Howe.
Thank you, Seerat, for having me back.
It's wonderful to have you. Today, we're going to pivot from the why to the how. As a generation, we're increasingly immersed in the solitary world of screens, what some call junk tech. So, given your role at Stanford, how do you see the future of learning balancing the power of ethical AI with the crucial need for human-to-human connection?
Yeah, what a beautiful opening question, Seerat. So we are living in a dual crisis or dual revolution, if I may call it that way. On one hand, we have this rise of artificial intelligence in our lives. And then on the other hand, we have less and less human relationships, human connections. So for example, we have less and less friends. So the number of friends for teenagers has decreased by 60% over the past decade or so, according to a survey in Europe, but also substantiated with some of other indicative factors here in the United States. We also spend less time with older adults. So one stat that I like quoting which is really, really fascinating from a societal perspective, is a child in the US, only 3% of children in the US have ever met an older adult above age 65 in their lives, so with not a family member. So children are less and less exposed to older adults because we live increasingly in age segregated societies where younger and older adults are not together. So what the result of this is that, we have more and more technology, and people are looking at technology or are using technology as almost a palliative to those human connections. And we are seeing this fast and furious with AI at the moment, with the rise of AI companions. So AI is increasingly being used as an AI for companionship, of mental health therapy reasons, but certainly in the area of companionship and friendship, fascinating to see the rise over the past 2-3 years of this category of companionship, where more and more human beings are looking at those machines for connection.
Yeah, that's fascinating. The research you showed that I think that number of friends teens have now has decreased by 60%. And I think that's because now with like the rise of social media, as we've seen, that we kind of have like fake friends now just on social media. Like we haven't even met them in person, but we just are on the same platform, and then we call it friends. So fake friends is one thing you mentioned. And also the rise of like AI companions. Like I know now there are these AI apps where you can build your own person and just start like talking and having a conversation with them. And people use like ChatGPT as a therapist because all ChatGPT does is just an affirmation machine. So whatever you say is just gonna compliment you back and be like, "Oh my God, that's so smart." And then people like it because they feel like, oh, someone actually listens to me, but I don't think that's listening or like agreeing with you if all it does is just keep like, what's the word? Putting it back on you.
Exactly. Those systems are using a very well-known technique in psychology called the mirroring effect. So they are sending you back or sharing some facts that you just said in a different way, that are actually using also positive psychology, generally speaking. Anyway, very praising. One of our visiting scholars here at Stanford University named Pil-Young Kim has observed that those AI systems are praising children 13 times more than a human. So they are also, so not only using mirroring, they are also using positive praising, which we love as humans. We love being praised and being told that what we are doing is great. However, this is all fake. It's a machine giving you that feedback. It's not real human connections. So there are lots of merits, but there are also lots of concerns with the simulated environment for relationships and replacing our human connections.
Wow, yeah, 13 times is much more than I thought. And I think we do that, like you mentioned, because it just satisfies our ego. Like someone actually thinks what I'm doing is good. And I think this is a little like interesting when we think about this in like the realm of like teaching and school because you emphasize genuine learning, which means being surrounded by humans and caring individuals. But now we're entering era of AI and these like AI companions where teachers are getting replaced. So ironically, this is like dehumanizing the learning process. So how does your framework use technology ethically to support human connection and not replace it?
Yeah, and think about this for yourself, and certainly for any of your listeners here. When we are surrounded by a human, whether they are a peer or whether they are a teacher or maybe a family member, the research shows that our brains are much more receptive to learning. And for example, in particular, our motivation to learn something new is much greater if I know that I have someone in the room or next to me who is looking at what I'm doing and seeing me and supporting me.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is actually some very old research on this that I find really fascinating. This was done for TV, so not for new technologies like AI, but very relevant to what we are experiencing with modern screens and technology. So this was done for young children watching Sesame Street in front of a TV. And it was observed that when there is an adult next to the child or around the child, even if the adult doesn't say anything whatsoever, so the mere presence of an adult next to the child increases the learning benefits of watching Sesame Street for the child. So we as humans, because we are so wired to connect with others, even when we are watching technology, whether it's TV or another screen, the fact is that if we have other humans, we understand that there is something in our brains is happening, that we are detecting that presence, that human presence, and then learning more as a result. It is fascinating. And by the way, that experiment on Sesame Street has also been replicated by, it's very different context. This was at the end of COVID-19 during the global pandemic. One of my colleagues, Pat Cool at the University of Washington, did an experiment where she looked at learning in video, Zoom or otherwise contexts. And she observed that if kids were surrounded by other peers on those Zoom sessions or other video calls, they were much more likely to learn. So very similar experiment where if we are surrounded by other human beings, we are more likely to learn. And I have to say, I feel this myself when if I'm by myself and trying to learn something new, one I learn certain way. If I have someone telling me how I'm doing and supporting me and mentoring me, I'm learning much faster and much differently.
Yeah, I think you emphasized like the importance of having a human around. So it doesn't have to be like an adult or a peer, but just having a human around definitely makes the learning experience more real. And I think, like you said about how when you have like friends around and you're learning, you're more likely to. And I can see that too, because like the classes like I have more friends in, we're more engaged. And that may be because we're like obviously talking to each other and like, talking about it, or I don't know what's going on in the brain, but it definitely feels more real and more like engaged in that. And I think this was a wonderful way you showed that technology is serving and not replacing like relationships. So it's helping you there, it's helping like teachers, but it's not replacing them. So we're still getting the human to human connections we need. Moreover, one thing we in our like class once we tried this thing where we like talked to an AI tool and we tried to learn from there. And then after that we had like our teacher explain it. And it definitely, even though you think that, oh, AI is definitely better because whatever question you have as a follow-up, it'll obviously just give you like a full essay like answer. I think I definitely enjoyed it more when our teacher was there rather than just like typing to an AI because it didn't feel real.
Exactly. And this is not to say that there are not positive applications of AI. There are many of them, but applications of AI that solely displaces human connections, I'm actually quite concerned about those. I think there are lots of things we can invent and innovate on for AI to actually increase our human connection. So, for example, we could think about using AI to facilitate small group discussions or interactions between different peers in a classroom or after school, things that are helping human to human connections and enrich learning as opposed to displacing the precious human relationships that make us learn
Yeah, I think that's good. Like staying away from the ones that like dehumanize the process.
and isolate us. Yeah.
And isolate us, yeah, that's a important part. And one more, we switch a little gears a little bit, but so many of us teens and our parents, we try to optimize our lives with activities and competitions and like sports, extracurriculars. So your work suggests that a child is most unlocked when they have the space and time to play and explore. So how can we reset the narrative from busyness equals success to connection equals flourishing?
Wow, what a beautiful way to ask this question, Seerat. I love it. So yeah, there is a research on this particular question. So the research on structured activities, whether they are sports or arts or music, shows very clearly that structured activities are amazing for kids, amazing, and adults, amazing, up to a certain point. And after that threshold, there is diminishing returns because we would all understand this, but at some point, if we do too many of those structured activities, then it may start becoming quite stressful. We may not be able to sleep as much, which impacts our mood and our ability to learn. And so there is a point after which it's not good enough, great anymore. And the problem right now is that we might be over-indexing on those structured activities in our teenagers' lives because there are so many pressures around college applications and other performance-related factors that are perceived to be driven by the success in those structured activities. But again, research is very clear on this, that great to do structural activities, but also very important to leave space for the mind to wander, play, free play, and be present again with other people in non-structured activity contexts.
Yeah, I understand. So you mentioned like after some like you can have as many like structured activities, but at some point there should be like a break where you can have some unstructured activities. So I had a follow-up for that. What would you say is like the golden ratio for like structured to unstructured activities? And then moreover, what does this playing, unstructured, and exploring time look for teens and like high schoolers?
Yeah, I would need to relook at this research that I'm thinking about from Penn that covered this particular topic. My recollection, it was around 15 hours at most of per week of structured activities. But let me come back to this. I would need to, and essentially the thinking is what is the amount of structured activities that allow for sufficient free play outside of school and outside of sleep, that are sleep being one of the key area that you don't want to decrease, because sleep is it's a major activity for our brain to recover every day. And so to continue learning and thriving, sleep is critical. So you don't want to reduce sleep to less than 9 to 10 hours for teenagers. If you count sleep every day plus school, plus ideally some time for free play, for free reading, for free set of activities, dinners, cooking, whatever people may have in their free time, a walk, a run, then you count for what is left. And I think it would probably be at most 15 hours a week of those structured activities. But Penn has some really more detailed activities that I will send you the link if you wanted to share it with your listeners.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. I think we would all love to check out the research by Penn. And yeah, I really liked you mentioned, yeah, I think you said 15 hours a week for structured activity. So after this, I'm gonna go check out my weekly schedule and see what I do. But before that, if I could track only one metric or variable in the next 90 days to implement from the love to learn philosophy, what would that one metric be?
Number of strong relationships. So if you were to start thinking about who they are in your lives and starting to take some notes, okay, maybe your parents, maybe a coach, maybe friends, maybe teachers, and how can you not only deepen this relationship with each of them in terms of nurturing and love, but also how can you maybe expand some weaker ties and make them closer to you? You would feel a huge difference in how you feel and how you learn.
That's awesome. So finding out how many strong relationships we have and then strengthening them. So I think the key ones would be with like your family, siblings, friends, and teachers, right? So yes, this conversation has been a masterclass in challenging assumptions. Dr. Howe, thank you so much for sharing the most ancient human need to be seen and connected is actually the most basic need we all deserve. It's our time to stop chasing systems that fail and invest in the system that always works, human connections. So go check out the book Love to Learn. And once again, it was incredible to have you, Dr. Howe.
Seerat, thank you. This was a joy, and happy holidays to you.
You are listening to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Tharaka Foundation. As part of our youth series, we will be releasing new episodes every month, so make sure to continue to check those out. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we thank you so much for listening.